Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. Today we're going to continue hearing evidence from Mr. Philip Heath of Kingspan. So would you ask Mr. Heath to come back in, please? Okay. Good morning, Mr. Heath.
Good morning.
Right, all ready to carry on then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Grange.
Yes, thank you. I just want to start with some follow-up questions following your evidence on Thursday afternoon. We talked about the building regulations and you explained your understanding of the building regulations and the approved document B between 2001 and 2010. Can we agree on this, that the building regulations are there to ensure that health and safety is properly safeguarded?
Yes.
And that when I say properly safeguarded, that means protecting the lives and bodily integrity of anyone affected by, for example, insulation products.
That's correct.
And did you understand that between 2001 and 2010?
Yes, I did.
Did you take health and safety seriously when you worked as a technical manager for Kingspan?
Yes, I did.
Did you take care to ensure the fire safety of your products was properly assessed and described to those outside Kingspan who were using those products?
Yes, I believe so.
And did you expect your technical officers underneath you to do the same, to take care to ensure that they were properly described?
I would have done, yes.
And did you take care to ensure that you engendered a culture of taking health and safety seriously while you were at Kingspan?
Yes, I would.
Now, just one question on the transcript. If we can go back to the transcript, that's day 78, page 191. This is your evidence from Thursday afternoon. So picking it up in line 18 there, this is where I was asking you about the point at which it became clear that you couldn't extrapolate and use one test to say that the system could be used in other applications. So at 18, I say, yes, I was going to come to this. So are you saying that it was suggested to you by the BRE that if you tested that kind of simplified system, let's call it that, then you would be able to extrapolate from that and use it in other applications? And then you answer, at the time, that was the inference from the BRE, yes. And then we go on, I say, when you say at the time, what time period are you referring to? Are you referring to before the 2005 test was done in May 2005? And you say, yes, it would have been, yes. And then I ask in line 5, did there come a time when you became aware that that wasn't the case, that in fact, either because the BRE told you it or because you'd worked it out elsewhere, you couldn't test K15 in a representative configuration and then extrapolate onto other applications? And then you say, well, obviously we took advice or the suggestion from the BRE to go down that route of that particular assembly. I think that was also probably to give them some technical data as well in relation to how that particular test performed. With regards to when we realised, I think after the test was completed, but I'm not sure of the period of time. And then I say yes, and then you say when the BRE, I believe, retracted their original suggestion. And then we go on, I say, yes, Mr. Meredith described it as moving the goalpost, right? Is that a fair characterisation of what had happened? And you say, well, that's certainly an analogy. Do you see that there? And I just wanted to see if I could pin you down as exactly when it was that the BRE made it clear that you couldn't use that test in a representative way.
It was certainly post-test.
Yeah.
With regards the period of time from the test to being given that notification, I have no recollection.
Okay. And can you help us as to how you came to be aware of that from the BRE? Was that in a meeting, or were you made aware of that by others at Kingspan? Can you help us?
It would have been from others within Kingspan.
And do you think it was before or after the test report arrived in December 2005? We know the test was in May 05. Was the point about it not being representative made clear to you before or after December 05?
I really can't recall.
Now, when we finished on Thursday, we were in the middle of discussing the fact there was no BR 135 classification report for that 2005 8414 test at the time that you were technical manager. Can we look now at KIN 30020718? This is a technical services report from January 2006, which is the month after that test report was issued in December 05. And this technical services report, you tell us in your statement, would have been produced by Ivor Meredith and you would have sent on to Mr. Rochford. Is that right?
That's right. All the team leaders or the senior people within the department would provide a report, and either Ivor or Andrew Pack would collate them, present it to me, and then I would present it to Dr. Rochford. Yeah.
And if we go to page 2, about halfway down under the heading projects, we can see the first bullet point there says this: the K15 facade test report is here, BS 84141. Although very advantageous in its raw form, a further assessment is needed to gain full advantage. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And what did you understand that to mean? A further assessment is needed to gain full advantage?
From recollection, it would be an assessment by Ivor in relation to the test report and the data that's within it.
I see. A written assessment?
A written or verbal assessment by Ivor and the BRE to Ivor, or because he would meet with them regularly.
Sorry, just to be clear, you said Ivor and the BRE in that last answer.
Yes, it would have.
Who did you understand would be providing this assessment to gain full advantage?
For me, it would have been a combination of both Ivor and the BRE.
Yeah. And just to be clear, would you have expected to see that in writing?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
No.
I see. Because I put it to you that there is no BR 135 written assessment by anybody at this time, by Ivor or by the BRE. We don't see that in a written form, do we?
No, I'm not sure if when I said a further assessment that related to the BRE 195. Sorry, I've forgotten the number of it, but I don't think that further assessment comment was related to the written assessment that was the BRE 135.
So what was that?
I think it was just an assessment actually on the test report.
I see. Well, I suggest to you that actually a natural reading of that is that it is referring to the further assessment under BR 135 with the pass-fail criteria in it that is being referred to there, but you say that's not right.
Yeah, I can't recall that far back whether it's I would have thought then it was an assessment, not a formal BRE 135 report.
I see. Is it possible that the BRE did not provide a BR 135 classification report at the time because those involved at Kingspan and the BRE considered this to be an indicative test and one which was not representative of a real-life external cladding system?
No, not at all. I think Kingspan didn't believe it was important to actually have the BRE 135. I think it was felt potentially it was optional at that time.
I see.
We'd had the verbal assessment from the BRE that they felt it had passed that test, and I think at the time we felt it was sufficient.
I see. I want to look at some correspondence from 2015 now, which you wouldn't have seen at the time, but I want to ask you about whether the substance of it was communicated to you. If we go to BRE 405123, if we look at the bottom of page 1, this is an email request from Adam Heath of Kingspan to the BRE. It's Vida Golbsate at the BRE, and he basically says in the first line, on a slightly related topic, it's come up in discussions recently, we never commissioned a classification report for our BS 8414 Part 1 test done in 2005. Do you see that there? And
Yes.
what happens is this request is sent on to Tony Baker of the BRE. You can see that from the email immediately above on the 8th of September. That's forwarded to Tony Baker. And then if we look at the top of page 1 at his response, he says this: "Hi Vida, this is not a straightforward one. In theory, we could issue a classification document. However, I can understand why one was not issued for this test, as it seems like an indicative type test. BS 8414 and BR 135 is a system test and classification system, and from what I can see from this report, there's no external weather protection system included, for example, render system or rain screen cladding. Whilst they have a cement board overcladding, I doubt this would be considered a complete system. Data such as this has been misrepresented in the market in the past." Do you see that there?
Yes.
Now, what I want to ask you is whether that was communicated to you at the time, that at least one of the reasons why a BR 135 classification report wasn't obtained was because, in fact, it wasn't a complete overcladding system. It had no weather protection included on the outside of the board, whether render or rain screen. Was that ever said to you by anybody?
No, it wasn't.
I see. Were you aware that Kingspan positively asserted to customers that such an assessment was being or had been carried out, a BR 135 assessment, after the 2005 test? Were you aware of that?
Sorry, could you just repeat that again?
Yeah, were you aware that Kingspan positively asserted to customers that such an assessment was being or had been carried out, that BR 135 assessment? Were you aware of that?
Not as far as I'm aware.
I see. Now, I want to ask you now about the change in the technology of the foam. We briefly discussed last week the change from old tech to new tech K15, and I want to ask you in more detail now. And if we look at your witness statement first on page 9, so KIN 30020709, and I want to look at paragraph 3.4. You tell us in that paragraph that in around 2003, Kingspan purchased a Dutch company called Marek, based in Kesteren in the Netherlands, which also produced phenolic insulation using basically the same chemistry, but different production technology than Cooltherm Limited. And you say, because the Kesteren phenolic technology allowed a faster production line speed and the production of greater thicknesses, it was decided to transfer the production of all phenolic products onto that Kesteren technology, and to do this by modifying the production line at the Kingspan site in Pembridge. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And you say there that it was basically the same chemistry but different production technology. So that's in the second and third lines, really in the third line, basically the same chemistry but different production technology. What do you mean by basically the same chemistry?
Well, I'm obviously not an industrial chemist, but I believe the three major components remained the same. I think it's basically fundamentally the three major components of the foam remain the same. I think that's what I meant about basically the same chemistry.
If we go over the page to 3.5, you tell us in the second line, just picking it up in the second sentence, to the best of my understanding, the difference between old or Barry phenolic technology and new or Kesteren phenolic technology relates to the manufacturing technique and the processing of the same chemicals, namely phenol resin, acid, catalyst, and blowing agent. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Now, if we can look at a spreadsheet now, which was produced for the inquiry by Kingspan, and it's exhibited to the third witness statement of Adrian Pargeter. It's at KIN 3022307, and we'll need the native version. And we also need the second tab, which is major changes. So this was provided to the inquiry after we asked for details of all major changes to the K15 product since its inception. And if we go down to row 7 on this spreadsheet, we see the change in the Kesterine technology. Do you see that there at the bottom of the page? September 06, Kesterine technology, SOPs with perforated facing. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And SOPs stands for Standard Operating
Procedures.
Procedures. Yes, thank you. And that is a reference there to the Kesterine technology also introducing perforations to the foil facing. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Whereas previously the K15 foil facings had been unperforated, hadn't they?
They had.
That's a significant change, isn't it? To go from a perforated foil to an unperforated to a perforated foil.
It's a change. I wouldn't have thought it would have been a, sorry, what was the word you used? Significant change.
Yes.
Yes, I wouldn't have thought it was a significant change in the facing. The facing remained the same, but with obviously some perforations within it.
Did you ever think about that might be whether it might be a significant change from the point of view of its fire performance?
I wouldn't, because the constituents or the build-up of the composite face remained the same. The contribution of the foil at the time would have been minimal, so I wouldn't have expected, and under advice from the technical processing team, I wouldn't have thought that was a significant change.
Did you ever ask for any tests to be carried out to check whether the change from a unperforated to a perforated foil facing made any difference in terms of its fire performance?
I can't recall, but whether because the processing team would have undertaken, if they felt it necessary, some small-scale tests, but I can't recall particularly asking for them.
I see. Now at column I, if we can have column I on the page, this provides details of the steps taken to ensure satisfactory product quality. Do you see that there? And I want to read from the second paragraph down, beginning the resin. Have you got that there? Do you see that?
Yes, sorry, yes.
And it says there, the resin that was going to be used in the production of phenolic foam at Pembridge was trialled at Kesterine before the Pembridge machine was commissioned in order to approve the use of the resin. Kingspan worked closely with the resin supplier to duplicate the resin that was used at Kesterine. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So does that mean that the transfer to the new technology also involved the use of a resin which had not previously been used in the Pembridge production line?
Reading that, it would seem to be a variant.
So that was a change, wasn't it?
That would be seen as a change in the chemical, a different supplier, but obviously trying to resemble what they were producing at Kesterine. Yes.
Yes, and my question to you is that different resin is a different chemical, is it not?
It is a different chemical. How different it is from a chemical composition, I couldn't comment, but it is a different chemical.
Did you ever take steps to ascertain what the difference was in terms of its fire performance, the change in resin?
I'm not sure if I knew that was the case at the time.
So that are you saying you didn't know it was a different resin?
I might not have known there was that variable at that time.
Let's look at column N of this spreadsheet. Various details are given in column N of the names of the individuals who were involved in consideration, assessment or testing of each change. And if I can read that paragraph, it says the PPDS. Just to help us, what's a PPDS?
I believe it's either a product plan development system.
Or a product process development system?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a method of checking the significance of any change. Would you agree?
That was a system that Dr. Rochford introduced in the 90s, I believe, yes.
Yes, and it was a system for checking whether there'd been any consequences to a change made. Do you agree?
Yes.
And it says there, the PPDS shows that Vincent Coppock, R&D, that would be research and development, yes?
Yes.
R&D manager was the project manager. His role was to work with the Dutch manufacturer to understand the Kestrel technology and bring that technology to Pembridge, including arranging any trials. Malcolm Rochford, technical director, updated the status of the PPDS, confirming that fire testing was required for this project. And then it says this: Philip Heath, technical services manager, signed off the part of the PPDS to confirm that physical fire tests and certification were completed. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And is that correct, that you did sign off the part of the PPDS to confirm that physical fire tests and certification were completed?
At that time, yes. Yes. I'm not sure of the list of fire tests that I signed off, but yes, I did sign that off.
No, I'm going to ask you about that. Before I ask you some more details about that, I just want to take you to something Mr. Meredith told us during his evidence. If we can go to the transcript, day 75, page 39. And I want to pick it up from line 3 towards the top of that page. And this is where I'm showing Mr. Meredith exactly the same spreadsheet I've just shown you.
Right.
And I ask him, do you agree with what's said there in terms of who had responsibility for different aspects of this, including that Philip Heath undertook the fire testing and certification for the new technology K15? And he says, yeah, this is the problem I had with this system, that although it's signed off, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's done. It means that it's in hand, I think. And then I say, I see. And then he says, because the certification and the fire testing for these products, we were doing it for years after the changeover. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Now, would you agree with Mr. Meredith that the fire testing and the certification work for the new product was being done for a period of years, long after K15 had been sold in its new technology form?
Yes, I mean, it is an ongoing development of the product. By 2006, we could not have tested it with every single component that's involved in ventilated rain screen. I think the sign-off was related fundamentally then to make it as a correlation to, say, old technology. So you'd be looking at small-scale tests, potentially for reference, say, for CE marking.
But can you help us to understand why it was that you were carrying on doing fire testing long after the 2006 start date for the new technology, the sale of new technology K15?
Yes, I think, like I say, we're only a component within a wall assembly. We would get approached from other component or associated product producers to be involved in further testing. So, there would be initial tests, but there would always be further ongoing tests. I mean, that's not just the case in ventilated rain screen, but we also saw that in flat roofing applications as well, where other material manufacturers wanted to test their product with our product within a particular system. So it might be a new player or an existing player in the market.
But on what basis did you consider it was safe to be selling new technology K15 from a fire safety point of view?
I think then it would have been based on the small-scale test to either a Euro class or to the Class O surface spread of flame, and then also the 2005 test.
So that's your evidence, is it, that you did some Euro tests and the Class 0, National Class 0 tests?
It would have been, from memory, it would have been based on those. There might have been other small-scale tests that the technical process team had undertaken to help me understand that more as well.
And when did you actually sign off on the PPDS, saying that that testing was complete and from your point of view it was a safe product to be selling?
I can't recall when I would have signed that off.
If we can go to Mr. Rochford's witness statement at this point. This is KIN 408838, and I want to look at paragraph 3.16 on page 9. Here, Mr. Rochford's dealing with the transfer to the new tech. And if I pick it up in the third line, he says, I've seen a screenshot of the data that was captured through the PPDS process relating to the transfer of new technology for all phenolic products except Cool Duct, which shows that this product was signed off by me in January 06 and ultimately signed off by the operations director September 06. This process did include a section in relation to fire testing and certification, which was signed off on the 21st of February 2008 by Phil Heath, which indicates to me that fire testing was one of the requirements to be completed, and signing off would indicate that this had been completed for all affected products. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain why that fire testing and certification part of the PPDS was signed off by you in February 2008, when the evidence suggests that K15 had been sold in its new form for 2 years prior to that point?
Yeah, no, I cannot explain that.
Would you agree that what ought to have happened was a comprehensive programme of fire testing so that you fully understood the fire safety consequences of that new product before it was sold, and particularly before it was sold and marketed for use on buildings over 18 metres?
On reflection, yes.
Now, you've been able to confirm to us in your statement that the test that was carried out in 2005, the 8414 test, must have been on old technology, K15. That's, for the record, that's at paragraph 311 of your statement. Now, moving on now, we don't need to go to it, but at paragraph 3.17 of your statement on page 12, you explain that there was an internal group set up specifically to handle the transfer to the new tech, which was called the Kesterem Technology Transfer Group. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, I believe so.
And as a member of that group, you explain that you were confirming what further testing of new tech was required prior to its adoption and arranging the appropriate tests. If we can look at some minutes of a meeting of that Kesterem Technology Transfer Group, this is KIN 3022003. Now, it doesn't look like you're present at this meeting. You've sent apologies by the looks of it. This is 16th September 04. Do you see that there? And yes. At the bottom of page 2, right at the bottom of page 2, we see a heading, Certification and Tested Needed. And it says, basically, all current UK results will need to be confirmed with Kesterem product. SBI single burning item results are mostly already covered and should be transferable. And then it says BS 476 Part 6 and 7, Class 0 has been achieved by some Kesterem products. And then P. Heath, confirm outstanding tests needed and arrange testing. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So, consistent with that spreadsheet that Kingspan provided to us, it looks like you were responsible for confirming what outstanding tests needed to be doing and arranging those tests. Is that right?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I was just reading it again.
Consistent with the spreadsheet we've had from Kingspan, it looks like you were responsible for confirming what outstanding tests were needed and arranging those tests. Is that right?
Looking at the action, that was the action.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, just going back to your witness statement, if we could bring this up on page 13 of your witness statement, paragraph 3.19 on page 13. you say this, as part of the change from old tech to new tech K15, we were continuously undertaking product development and fire testing. When new technology K15 was first adopted in 2006, my recollection is that I understood that it had equivalent fire performance to old technology K15, and I had signed off on this as part of the Kestrel technology transfer project. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Now, can you help us as to how you came to the conclusion then that the products were equivalent in fire performance to old technology? On what basis did you reach that conclusion at that time?
I would have imagined that would have been based on the small-scale tests on Euroclass and potentially the single burning item test. I would have based it on that, and also the comments from the processing team that the technology that we were transferring across wouldn't have had any particular difference to the old technology.
Is it your evidence that there were, in fact, further tests that were actually carried out by Kingspan on the new technology to ascertain its fire performance?
New tests, certainly the 8414 test would have been a new test.
Which 8414 test are you referring to there?
That would have been the 2005 test.
Yes, but I think we're all agreed that
Sorry, that was on old technology.
That was on old
Yeah,
technology.
Sorry.
So what tests actually were carried out to, as far as you can recall, under your watch to investigate and to reach that conclusion or disprove that?
I can't recall, because I know we were very much, the technical department, or technical services department, were very much involved in the large-scale testing, and the small-scale tests would have generally been organised by the technical processing team. So although it said in the minutes previously that I would arrange the tests, it wouldn't be, as far as I can recall, it wouldn't be myself or my team who would arrange small-scale tests.
But you, presumably as the person signing off the PPDS on fire performance, you would expect to be informed about the results of those fire tests. Yes.
Indeed I would, but I can't recall what those tests would be.
And would those have included tests to National Class 0, BS 476 Part 6 and Part 7 tests?
It would, or we'd have correlated it from results of the Kestrel technology.
Let's look at a report now, KIN 405292. It's a half-yearly report for 2007. KIN 405292. Do you see that there? Kingspan
Yes.
Technical Services Department half-yearly report for 2007.
Yes.
And underneath, can you see it says Andrew Pack, Technical Services Manager?
Yes.
And then Ivor Meredith and Gareth Mills are listed on there. Do you see that there? That's your team, isn't it?
Andrew, Ivor, yeah. Gareth, yeah, the three direct lines were Andrew Pack, Ivor Meredith and Justin Davis. I believe Gareth reported into Ivor, but yes.
And then if we look on page 5, there's a heading CE marking, certification and fire testing. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And if we go on to page 11, I think what we see is that we can see from page 11 that this section appears to have been written by Ivor Meredith. Do you see that there?
Yes.
So this section of the report's written by him. Can you remember reading that half-yearly report?
I would have read it at the time.
Yeah. And if we can go to page 7 and look at the first paragraph there. And if we can read that, so it says, we have had numerous attempts with the new technology to achieve the Class 0 requirement within the BS 476 Part 6 test. We are now looking at future modifications using fire retardants. However, this will push us into a mandatory higher level of attestation for CE marking, which for the moment may be an issue for phenolic. Do you see that there? We are also looking at repeating some of the near misses at alternative laboratories just in case. So we know that BS 476 Part 6 is a fire propagation test, and it's one of the tests you have to have done and certain results obtained to achieve national class naught. It appears from this, doesn't it, that the new technology was struggling to pass 476 Part 6 by mid-2007, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And that would suggest, wouldn't it, that it didn't have equivalent fire performance. Do you agree?
The problem with 476 Part 6, and any tests of this nature, they're very variable in the results that it provides. And I think one of the characteristics of phenolic and other insolents is that it can extinguish the flame source. So it's a very variable test.
Mr. Heath, do you see the first lines there? It says, we have had numerous attempts with the new technology. They hadn't tried it once. They've had numerous attempts, and you're being told that it's struggling to achieve that 476 Part 6 test. What I'm asking is, at the time, did it occur to you that it wasn't of equivalent fire performance?
At the time, I was looking at that, it would appear that way. But I mean, the process team would be advising as to how they were going to continue and pursue this. I think there was a number of people looking at this whole project, but at the time we were clearly struggling in meeting that fire propagation test, yes.
Can you explain how you were continuing to sell K15 with Class Naught as part of the marketing literature throughout this period?
Well, I think under advice from the processing team, we were using, I think, a fire test report that was based on the old Kestron or based on the Marek Kestron technology that we're using at the time.
So are you saying for their national tests, these are national, they're specific to the UK, not Holland, you were trying to rely on reports that had come from Holland? Is that what you're saying?
I think we were basically based we had the Class O results from the Kestron technology produced in Holland, yes.
Where are those reports? Can you remember actually seeing them?
I can't recall.
Is it speculation on your part that there were such reports, or do you actually recall seeing such reports from the Netherlands?
I've no recollection. It's just obviously how we were informed by the processing team about the results, both the Kestron team and the UK team. But I've no recollection of seeing those reports.
No.
I mean, I see a lot of reports, so I've no recollection of one individual now.
I'm a bit puzzled by this, Mr. Heath. See if you can help me.
Mm-hmm.
Is it your recollection that tests in accordance with the British standard, this is BS 476 Part 6, had been carried out in Holland on what we've called the new technology material?
I was under the impression that the BS 476 Part 6 and 7 test had been done on the Kestron produced phenolic technology. Whether tests were undertaken, whether it was in the UK or a Dutch laboratory, I'm not sure, but I was under the impression that a Class O had been achieved for that technology, although not produced in Pembridge.
I mean, that's slightly difficult to reconcile with the first paragraph on this page, isn't it?
Yes, I agree, yes.
If we go to page 11 of this report, within this same section from Mr. Meredith, and I want to look at the second bullet point down. Do you see there? He says he's summarising the main highs and then the main lows. Second down, he says successful promotion and persuasion of the market into accepting phenolic as the best thing since sliced bread. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And in the third bullet point, the approved document B consultation and the introduction of the 8414 clauses, therefore allowing us better access to the high-rise market for K15, i.e. above 18 metres. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So would you agree that what's being said in this report is one of the highs at this time is that you've successfully promoted and persuaded the market into accepting phenolic, including in the over 18 metre market?
Did this report also, did it reference the 2005 test as well? Or to what?
We'll check that.
Could you just remind me what date this?
We can check that, but I think we're agreed that, actually I'm being told no, it does not, but the 2005 test was on old tech,
Right,
not new tech.
right.
So if you were using that, you shouldn't have been, should you?
Sorry, could you repeat the first question?
So what I was asking is, do you accept from those two bullet points there that what's being said is that one of the highs at this time is you've successfully promoted and persuaded the market into accepting phenolic, including in the over 18 metre market?
It would read that way, yes.
And yet, if you look at the lows, do you see the second bullet point there? It says, struggling with verification of basic properties, i.e. low lambda and class naught. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So in Mr. Meredith's summary, he's also highlighting to you that you're struggling to verify the basic properties, including class naught.
That's correct.
Are you saying that at this time you still understood the new tech to have equivalent fire performance to the old tech?
Well, these reports obviously they be passed up the line as well to ask for comments from my director as to the next direction this would go. But I clearly recognise that we are struggling in the verification of Class O there. Yes.
Yes, and it was your responsibility as the person under the PPDS who'd taken responsibility for the fire testing section to sign off on the new tech, wasn't it?
Correct, yes.
Do you accept that it was your responsibility to ensure that the BS 8414 test results you'd had from 2005 remained relevant if you were still marketing it for use above 18 metres?
Sorry, could I?
Do you accept that it was your responsibility to ensure that the BS 8414 test results you'd had from 2005 remained relevant, given you were still marketing it for use above 18 metres?
Yes, I do.
In 2006, new technology K15 had not been incorporated into any test for BS 8414, had it?
That's correct.
Just while we're in this document, just to pick up on a slightly separate point, but we're in this document, it's, and if we look at the second paragraph on page 9, just before we leave it, do you see in the middle of that page, it says this: Kingspan Technical were heavily involved in the consultation of the English Fire Regulation Approved Document B. Out of the 250 consultation submissions, Kingspan submitted 6 versions under various guises: BRUFMA, EPFA, company and individuals. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So it would appear that Kingspan, under various guises, has made submissions about the consultation that was carried out to approved document B. Is that right?
That's correct, through various of the trade associations we were involved in at the time. Yes, which would.
Was that normal practice for Kingspan to submit numerous consultation responses under the guises of other organisations, such as BRUFMA or the EPFA?
I think, casting my mind back, though there was seats available within the consultation through the various trade associations, and I think through our marketing department we did accept the seats that were available to us on those consultations.
I see. Okay. Now, moving forward with the chronology, I now want to ask you about the tests in 2007 and 2008 on systems incorporating K15. It's right, isn't it, that Kingspan carried out 4 tests to 8414 Part 2 at the BRE in 2007 and 2008 on systems incorporating new technology K15?
Certainly, the K15 new technology was used on 4 tests. I don't know whether all the tests were commissioned by Kingspan. I think some
I
of
think 2 were in conjunction with Kingspan off-site,
Right.
2 in 2008, and 2 were with SOTEC and METSEC.
Right. So yes. So there were the 2 tests commissioned by SOTEC, and I presume the other 2 tests were commissioned by the Kingspan off-site division at the time.
I see, yeah. And Kingspan off-site, that's another company owned by the Kingspan Group, is that correct?
It was, yes. It was a business involved in looking at prefabrication, both 2D and 3D modular construction.
And it's right, isn't it, that none of those systems in those 4 tests passed and could be classified to BR135, could they? They were all failures.
I believe they all failed, yes.
Did that have any effect on your view that the fire performance was equivalent?
It was difficult to say because obviously there were completely different tests. The 2 SOTEC tests, I believe, were based on an aluminium cassette, which performs considerably different from the non-combustible test we carried out in 2005. So. Yes, there were completely different tests. I think that one of the other off-site tests was a combustible external cladding material with a render on it. But certainly the 2 SOTEC ones were aluminium, and I believe there was Kingspan tested, but also I think mineral wool was also tested in that same series of tests, which also failed.
Do I take it from your answer that you didn't have any concerns about the performance of K15 based on the evidence that was available about these tests?
I think at the time it was just a huge learning curve with these large-scale tests. I think I said in my statement, we were very new to this technology, and I think the BRE was very new to this technology, and there was reticence from component suppliers to be involved in these tests as well, because they had a share of the market which didn't require them to test.
Sorry, just to answer my question, is it right that you didn't have any concerns about the performance of the K15 itself based on these tests?
I think based on those tests, I think that's correct. I think we were looking at this as a whole system test, and that the system failed, not just the K15 in this instance.
I see. Well, let's keep going with the documents. So just to put this in context, by the end of 2005, a separate British standard test, BS 8414 Part 2, had been published. And is it right that by 2007, queries were being raised with Kingspan by customers about the use of their products in high-rise building with steel frame systems?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
With the documents I've seen, yes.
And if we could go to KIN 408847, this is a document we're going to go through in some detail. This is an internal report written by Mr. Meredith and dated the 7th of January 2008. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do, yes.
And for now, I just want to look at the second page under the title Project Stakeholders, and the second paragraph down. So there we can see, he says the project was run jointly between SOTEC, METSEC and Kingspan, cost split 3 ways. If it had been successful, SOTEC would have included it in their approved Red Book listing, etc. And then in the next paragraph, it says this information is essential to Kingspan for all facade sales above 18 metres throughout the UK and Ireland. Not having evidence that our product performs onto a steel frame is causing job losses, specifically in Scotland, on a daily basis. However, we are fighting the case for each project with the BS 84141 onto masonry test data performed in 2008. Do you see that there? performed in 2005. Sorry,
yes,
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
No.
Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
Did you read this report when it was?
I did. I agreed with Ivor that he would commission this report because he had concerns, and I asked him to prepare this report as well. So it was an agreement between myself and Ivor, so it could actually progress it up the chain and be discussed at future meetings.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you've said you agreed that Ivor would prepare the report because he had concerns. Had he told you before you saw this written report that he had concerns about how K15 itself was performing?
Yes, and you know, he came with this suggestion to write this report, and I agreed he should.
Did you understand how Kingspan was fighting the case for each project with the 8414 Part 1 test data performed in 2005?
I wasn't aware we were fighting for each project. I knew we were getting inquiries in relation to projects in general, yes.
Did you ever question how Kingspan could be doing that, given that you are now selling new technology, K15?
On reflection, yes.
Does that mean on reflection you didn't question that? Or
No, on reflection, I would question that, yes.
yeah, looking at it now.
Yes.
Yeah. And then if we go to page 5, about halfway down that page, we can see in the third paragraph down, about halfway down that page, there's this paragraph beginning, however. Do you see that there? He says, however, last year the second version of the 8414 series was published. This raised the issue that the BS 8414 Part 1 data that we were using did not cover steel frames. Although we continue to use the 2005 tests, some fire regulators were asking for evidence to support BS 8414 Part 2. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And do you agree that it was well understood internally by Kingspan by this time that the 8414 test data, the Part 1 test data, was not relevant to steel frame systems?
I believe so at that time, yes.
And yet, would you agree that the strategy at this time was to continue to use that data to support compliance of the product for over 18 metres on steel frame systems nonetheless?
I think we provided the test reports to inquiries in relation to Part 2 for them to understand what we had tested and, if necessary, for them to seek further advice.
I see. If we can go to an email at this point, KIN 405243. This is an email chain from November 06. This is where Kingspan had sent the 2005 8414 test report to Barris in order to support the use of K15 on this particular project. And if we look at page 2, there's an email sent by James Emery of Wintec to Bob Williamson of Carillion on the 30th of November at 12:05. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And if we pick it up, he says, after further research, the test report, and that's the 2005 test number, is not a valid test for the system constructed by Barris at Buxton Street. He says, we believe it's been tested to the wrong part of 8414. It should have been tested to Part 2 and not Part 1. Our understanding of the test is that Part 1 is aimed for masonry wall construction and Part 2 is for lightweight steel structures. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And then it says the build-up of components is not comparable between the test report and the Buxton Street construction. To utilise this test as a method of showing compliance to building regulations, the whole system needs to be tested, i.e. all the components installed at Buxton Street. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And we can see from the top email in the chain that this was sent to you by Mr. Meredith asking for guidance as to how to answer it. Do you see that there? He says, to you, 1st of December 2006. Any guidance on this one, Mr. Any guidance on this one, Mr. Wintech does say he will assist by providing a test, though. This mess is all Promat's fault. I will copy you with the email I'm sending Nigel Murray, as I may need it editing as I'm angry. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
We launched their product and they ain't helping us. So would you agree this shows you were well aware that when you tried to use the 2005 test data, some individuals on steel frame projects were questioning that?
From this, yes, I do.
Yeah. Can we look at another email chain? KIN 403701. This is from May 2008. At the bottom of the first page, Mr. Meredith emails you on the 19th of May 2008. Do you see that at the bottom? And he says there to you, I'm having big issues with K15 approval at the moment. The problems are relating to NHBC jobs. This causes a lot of concern. Perhaps we can chat tomorrow. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And then going up the chain, you say in the next email, OK, I'm out in meetings in London all day, but we'll make contact. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And it's about a development. Can you see it says Woolner's Way, Stevenage? Do you see that there?
Yes.
And then if we go up to the very top email in the chain, Mr. Meredith says this. This was the email I'm worried about. We simply do not have the information to support use of K15 above 18 metres with steel frames. I'm worried that the product will be removed from site and the ongoing effect of such an action. I think getting this sorted should take priority over all other projects as it's causing us to lose work. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So he seems to be concerned that the product's going to be removed from site because K15 cannot be used in steel frames above 18 metres. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And he's absolutely clear with you at this point that there's no evidence to support the use of K15 above 18 metres with steel frames. Would you agree?
At this time, yes.
And can you recall what advice you gave about this use of K15 on this building?
I can't recall what advice I gave to Ivor in relation to that, no.
Would you accept that Mr. Meredith repeatedly raises in writing a lack of test evidence about the use of K15 above 18 metres, including in steel frame systems? Would you agree that you had that repeatedly in writing from Mr. Meredith?
I would. I think the whole team understood that situation, yes.
What did you do about those concerns?
It would have been discussed at the technical lamination meetings as to how we would move that forward.
But what did you do about it? He's concerned that you can't support the use of K15 on high-rise buildings, including steel frame systems. You're his manager. You're manager of the technical department. What did you do about it?
All I did at the time was pass it up to my superiors to determine if there was, from a product development, how we could move that forward.
That's your evidence, is it, that you passed these concerns up to your superiors? Did you do that?
And also discuss with Ivor, how we could best move this issue on. It's with reflection, we may have handled this different. Yes.
Yes. If we could look at paragraph 7.58 of your witness statement on page 54. And I want to ask you about just the last few lines there, the last 4 lines. You say, in this period, we did not have a BS 8414 Part 2 test to support this type of system, and we were only able to provide evidence of the 2005 8414 test, and suggest that in steel frame systems, a non-combustible substrate should be used to simulate the system tested in 2005. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
How did you determine that it was appropriate to suggest to customers to simulate the 2005 test rather than replicate it by using a non-combustible substrate, even within a steel frame system?
Right. Sorry, what? Is there a period of time I'm referencing this at all or not?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you to some technical literature in May 2009 to just show you this. Maybe let's do that now. This is a KIN 402607. This is a technical bulletin dated May 09. Do you see that there? We can see the date in the top right-hand corner. Insulation for ventilated rain screen cladding systems.
Yes.
Can you help us as to who would have drafted this and signed off on this document?
At the time, there was a number of people involved in this technical bulletin within the department. I believe there was representatives from technical services, Andrew Pack, Ivor, myself, business development and marketing.
If we go to page 2 of it, the bulletin says at the top left-hand side, it says, under steps to compliance, it says, this technical bulletin details the route to compliance with approved document B2 to the building regulations for insulated rain screen cladding systems fixed to new and existing steel-framed or masonry walls. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And if you go on to page 3 and look in the bottom left, we can see it says there at page 3, for buildings of 18 metres more in height, as Kingspan Cooltherm K15 meets the BR135 performance criteria when tested to 84141 2002 with a horizontal cavity barrier, Cooltherm K15 complies with the requirements of approved document B if installed, and this is the point, if installed on the cold side of a non-combustible substrate, i.e. calcium silicate board or masonry, and the maximum vertical distance between cavity barriers is 3.5 metres. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And the literature therefore said that any non-combustible substrate can be used. That's right, isn't it?
The literature at the time said that.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Do you agree? Looking at that, it says if installed on the cold side of a non-combustible substrate.
On this data sheet, yeah. On the technical bulletin, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It absolutely does not make clear, does it, that Kingspan's test data is based only on masonry substrate?
It doesn't. It doesn't. But I know where that reference came from with regards to the calcium silicate board and masonry.
Can you help us? Where did that come
I think it was. It came from the SBI, the single burning item test, which classed a non-combustible substrate as calcium silicate, masonry, and steel.
But Kingspan hadn't tested that solution, had it? It hadn't tested a steel frame with then a calcium silicate board, which then the K15 is attached to, in a rain screen system. It hadn't done that, had it?
We hadn't, no.
No. And you said it was based on SBI testing, but that's European classification testing. It's much smaller scale than 841.
It is. It was just the narrative surrounding non-combustible substrate, I think.
Was that checked at any stage with a fire engineer to say whether they would agree that that was appropriate for Kingspan to be suggesting?
No, it wasn't.
Did you ever, at any stage, consider the risks of recommending an untested solution in this way?
I believe we did. We understood the situation, and with hindsight, we would have provided a different document, I believe.
If I go on in your witness statement now, and I want to look at paragraph 3.25 on page 16. I want to pick it up in the fourth line down. You're talking about the tests in 2007 and 2008, And you say this in the second line: I considered the failure of these tests to be indicative of the tested system being unable to meet the performance criteria of BR135, rather than any particular component being unsuitable, including the new technology K15. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Can you help us as to when you reached that conclusion, that you considered that failure to be indicative of the tested system rather than telling you anything about any particular component, including the new tech K15? When did you reach that considered conclusion?
Well, I believe all these large-scale, they are system tests, and I don't believe the results are allied to one particular component within a system. The failure can be, from what I can gather, be on a number of levels, and this test was very complex in that regard.
So, Mr. Heath, does it follow then that you can't use the system test to indicate the suitability of any individual component?
It's difficult to say, because you might, what one material might pass in that test and it may not. There's so many variables with regards to cavity widths and things like that. So it is.
But isn't that the whole point of a system test? If it's a system test,
Yes.
you can say whether the system as a whole passed or failed.
Yes.
But if the system passed, you can't extrapolate from that to say that any individual component of the system is or is not good, because you put it together with other components
Yes.
in another system, you might get a different result.
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you consider that these failed tests to Part 2 of 8414 impacted at all on K15's suitability for use on steel-framed systems?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Did you consider that these failed tests to Part 2 of 8414 impacted at all on K15's suitability for use on steel-framed systems?
Steel frame systems with those particular external systems on.
So are you saying that you
Within that
did
particular
think
system.
that there would be systems using a steel-framed system that K15 would be suitable on after these tests?
Potentially there would have been systems available that we would have passed, and I think we have subsequently passed some 8414 Part 2 tests.
What tests are you referring to there?
I don't know particularly, but I believe after my tenure there was some Part 2 tests completed and passed.
After the Grenfell Tower fire? Is that
No,
what-
after my tenure
see.
as
Well-
technical manager.
I see, but you couldn't have known about those at the time, could you?
No.
By
but-
definition?
By definition, but, the testing of the two SOTEC tests, it's obviously those systems, it was obviously difficult to pass those systems, both with our products and other products, I believe.
Yeah. Let's go back to Mr. Meredith's report, and I want to look at some other sections of it. KIN 408847. And we don't need to go to it, but you confirm in your statement that you did receive this report from Mr. Meredith and you sent it to Mr. Rochford on the 29th of January 2008. Let's move to page 2 now, towards the bottom of the page, under the heading Results. If we could look there, it says this: by 17 minutes, the top fire barrier had breached and the raging inferno moved up to the top thermocouples and pushed them past 600 degrees, thus failing the simple criteria of BR135. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And at the bottom of that page, he notes the 84142 doesn't have a pass or fail. It needs to be cross-referenced with BR135. And then over the page, can we see the top of the page, he says this: the phenolic was burning on its own steam and the BRE had to extinguish the test early because it was endangering setting fire to the laboratory. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And then after why did it fail, he's got a heading, why did it fail? And then he says this: the new technology phenolic is very different in a fire situation to the previous technology, which has passed several similar tests. The old technology would turn to a light ash and fall away, leaving to substance to feed the fire. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Now, when you read this report, do you agree that it was clear from what Mr. Meredith was saying that he considered the fire performance of the K15 itself to be a matter of significant concern?
I do, yes.
And these observations he's made here, the ones on this page, the phenolic was burning on its own steam. The new technology phenolic is very different. He's highlighting those separate from any concerns about the system, isn't he?
He is, yes.
Did you agree with those concerns when you read this?
I agreed based on the evidence that Ivor was providing, though I'd not obviously witnessed this test, but I could only go on what Ivor was telling me.
Yes. And he was your expert in this area by this time, wasn't he?
He had the expertise, yes.
Yeah.
On the large-scale tests, yes.
Did you have any basis on which to disagree with him about what he was reporting about the fire performance of the new technology K15?
I didn't at that time, no.
No. Can we just look at the transcript? Day 75, this is in Mr. Meredith's evidence, page 157. I want to pick it up on line 7. I ask him there at line 7, we can see that you're clearly concerned about the way the phenolic burned. Did Philip Heath and Malcolm Rochford share your concern about the fire performance of the new technology K15 at this time? And then he says this, he says, like I say, I think this might have been the time that I was criticised for not being very positive about our products, or sorry, the Kingspan products. And I say, so does it follow that you didn't think your managers were concerned or were concerned in the same way as you? I don't think they were concerned in the same way as me, no. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree with what he says there, that you weren't as concerned as he was at the time?
I disagree with that. I have to say I've never criticised Ivor's work or his commitment's the wrong word, but I've never criticised Ivor for not being positive at all.
So you don't ever remember a time when you... What about when you passed down feedback from someone above you? He talks in another place about a director being negative about him. Did you ever pass on comments to him that others in the company higher up than you thought he was being too negative?
I would have done, yes. I would have passed those comments on.
And do you remember passing those comments on?
I don't remember passing those comments on, but I would have done, because I had no criticisms of Ivor work I had no criticisms of Ivor's work at all, but I did pass on comments from other people to him, yes, but I was fully supportive of him.
Yes, so you say, I did pass on comments from other people to him. Were they negative comments to him about not being positive enough about K15 at this time?
There was some criticism in that regard, yes, and that's why I passed it on, to show that I was fully supporting him.
Yeah.
Although there was this criticism, I was fully supporting him.
Yeah. So even though you yourself weren't saying it, you were passing on comments from your superiors to Ivor to that effect?
I was, and I was supporting him in relation to that as well.
If we carry on, picking up line 20, he said, I felt a tremendous responsibility for this because the buck stopped with the technical department to make sure that it was suitable for the marketplace, and we had to do the testing. And then I say, after you wrote this, and obviously this report was delivered to the technical team, did you feel at the time that your concerns about the fire performance of new technology K15 were being taken seriously by Philip Heath and Malcolm Rochford? And then he says this, I felt like I wasn't ever heard, actually, when it came to issues like this. Now, do you agree, looking at it now, and I'll show you some more parts of this report in a moment, that you didn't take Ivor's concerns seriously enough when he raised them with you?
I personally did, yes.
You did take them seriously?
I did, yeah. I had a lot of respect for Ivor.
When you say you took them seriously, what did you do about them?
These would have been conveyed to Malcolm, and I expect higher up as well. So at the technical meetings, Ivor would present his monthly report, and I'd fully support him in what he was saying.
And what was the result when you communicated those concerns to those higher up than you?
I can't recall.
You can't recall?
I can't recall.
Do you actually have a clear recollection of saying to your superiors, I was really concerned about this fire performance, I'm passing that on to you because this is really important? Do you ever remember saying that?
I would have done it at the technical meeting when he provided his monthly report or gone over the aspects of it. I would have fully supported him, yes.
I see. Going back to his report, it's at 8847, KIN 40s. Did you study the photographs within the report and contrast those with the photographs of the 2005 test?
I can't recall whether I would have done or not.
Can we go to KIN 403693? This is an email chain between the BRE and Mr. Meredith around this time. And if I go to the bottom half of page 1, yes, there we see Mr. Meredith's email to Sarah Colwell and Phil Clark on the 9th of January. Now, you're not copied into this exchange, but in the first line, he says this: further to yesterday's viewing of the carnage, could you please send the DVD to the address below ASAP? As you can imagine, there are many senior persons in Kingspan wishing to view it. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Did you yourself watch the recording of that December 2007 test?
I can't recall whether I did. I would imagine I did, but I have no recollection of it.
I see. And then in the second paragraph, he says, picking it up in the second sentence, having cross-reference with previous tests, it would seem there was more fire spread from the insulant. However, please don't quote me on that. And the cavity barrier may have failed slightly. Your off-the-record and on-the-record comments may prove helpful. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And you were aware at the time, weren't you, that Ivor Meredith was telling you that there was more fire spread from the insulant itself?
Yes, I was aware of his comments, yes.
And then in the final paragraph of that email, if we look at the very final paragraph of it, beginning, as we are getting, right at the bottom of that page, it says this: as we are getting some pressure from a certain manufacturer questioning the performance of our product, I need to be confident that the BRE would not write it was the fault of the flame spread on the insulant. From our discussions, I understand the official statement would system failure. I will not quote you on this. I just need to be confident when we say the material has the ability to pass. However, whether it does or not can boil down to the system. Do you remember at the time that it was agreed with the BRE that there would be an official statement that this was system failure and that they wouldn't say anything further about the concerns that they and Mr. Meredith had about the performance of the K15?
I wouldn't at the time, no.
You wouldn't have been aware of that at the time?
I wouldn't, no.
Let's go back to Mr. Meredith's internal report, KIN 408847, and on to page 3. We've got under why did it fail. We've read the first paragraph under why did it fail. If we look at the next paragraph, he says this: the phenolic burnt very ferociously and gave the top cavity barrier a serious hammering. Do you see that there?
I don't.
In the second paragraph, after you've got why did it fail?
Yes.
As the heading. We've read the first paragraph. I was reading then the next line in the second paragraph. The phenolic burnt very ferociously
Right,
and gave the top cavity barrier a serious hammering. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And then on page 3, about halfway down, so it's right at the bottom of that page, if we just keep it as it is, we can see it says perforations in the phenolic foil faces have caused a reduction in the Euro class when tested in the SBI. Loss of the perforations may help. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So would you agree that you're also being told in this report that the perforations in the foil have caused a reduction in the Euro class? Do you see that?
I do. If I can go back to that other paragraph, though, about the phenolic burnt ferociously.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the second line. It did, however, hold out, and there was a slim chance that it may have held out long enough in the crib to start burning down, and the test would have been successful. So
Yeah.
this is one of the issues of the test. You know, sometimes it can look worse than it actually is, and still gain a pass. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Let's look at the bottom of page 3, and we'll do this and then we'll break. There's a section at the bottom of page 3 that's headed comments from the BRE. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And it says this: the official line, it's a system failure. No individual component can be solely held responsible for the failure. And then we see this: however, unofficial comments. It was apparent that the insulation was fully involved in the test. Surface spread of flame was apparent, and the core continued to burn when the flame source had been extinguished. They stated they did not remember the product performing like that last time. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And do you remember reading those unofficial comments from the BRE at that time?
With hindsight, yes, I would have read those, but I cannot recall. But I would have read them, yes.
So it's not just Ivor telling you that it's performing very differently, the K15 itself. It's also the BRE telling you that, isn't it?
In that narrative, yes. But again, you know, whether the system and the aluminium contributed to the extra burning of the phenolic, I couldn't comment. But yes, I read what they're saying.
And did you read this report and continue to think that they had equivalent fire performance, the old tech and the new tech?
Again, it's a system test and correlating the two. So as I sit here now, it's difficult to say what my opinion was at the time.
I see. Well, we'll ask some more questions about that after the break.
Right, is that a good moment?
That's a good moment.
Right, well, we'll have a short break now, Mr. Heath.
Okay.
We'll come back at 20 to 12, please.
Okay.
And as I think I said to you on Thursday, when you're out of the room, please don't talk to anyone about your evidence or anything relating to it.
Right.
All
Okay.
right? Thank you. Would you like to go to the usher, please? Thank you. Thank you. 20 to 12, please. Would you ask Mr. Heath to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, Mr. Heath, ready to carry on?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Grange.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Heath. This morning you mentioned that you did escalate Mr. Meredith's concerns up to those more senior to you at Kingspan. Can you recall who it was that you discussed his concerns with at Kingspan?
It'd be that my direct line manager, Dr. Rochford, and he would have seen all the correspondence that I've had written, and I would assume Dr. Rochford then would have also passed that on or reported that at the divisional board meetings.
You made that assumption, did you? You didn't know that?
I didn't know that, but that was, generally the protocol. But certainly Malcolm was aware of all the written correspondence and discussions I'd had with him in relation to Ivor's concerns. Yes.
Okay. Just on these SOTEC MECSEC tests in 2007, 2008, can we look at paragraph 322 of your witness statement now on page 14? And I want to pick it up in the 5th line down. You say, it begins having been. You say, having been shown contemporaneous documents in preparation of this witness statement, it appears that in January 2008, METSEC and SOTEC tested the same system using mineral fibre insulation in pace of K15, and that this also failed to meet the BR135 criteria. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
Are you including that in your witness statement because it was a factor for you in determining the suitability of K15 that the same system tested had been tested with Rockwool and had failed?
I think I put that into the statement because I think it just shows that the performance of the aluminium in that particular 8414 test obviously had impinged greatly on the overall performance of the system.
But was that actually a factor in your thinking at the time, thinking back to it?
I can't recall.
You can't recall?
No.
Now, going back to Mr. Meredith's report again, KIN 408847, if we go back into page 3, just over halfway down, there's a paragraph beginning, in all honesty. Can you see just over halfway in the middle of that page? He says this, in all honesty, from what I've seen, the way the phenolic burned is of the most concern. Therefore, we need to add a fire retardant, which could also help us get class 0. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So just to be clear, you were aware at the time, were you, that Mr. Meredith thought this was of the most concern, how the phenolic had burned?
From reading that, yes.
Did you give any consideration at this time as to whether it was appropriate for Kingspan to keep selling the K15 product, and including for built jobs that it knew over 18 metres?
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sorry, I was just looking back.
Did you give any consideration at this time as to whether it was appropriate for Kingspan to keep selling the K15 product, including for jobs that it knew to be over 18 metres?
I don't recall at the time having that opinion. I may have done. I can't recall at the time.
Can you help us as to why you didn't say, stop all sales of this product, particularly sales over 18 metres, we need to do some further investigations? Why did you not do that?
I can't recollect why I wouldn't have said that. I don't know why I wouldn't have said that.
Did it ever occur to you at the time that that might be something you ought to give consideration to? You're seeing your product perform much worse in fire testing. This is about life safety. Did that not ever occur to you?
I think we were, again, just looking at that particular system test and coming back to the system. We probably wondered, was it just that system that it was failing on at that time? Did that impinge on it? So that there was a number of things we were considering at the time as a collective.
I see. If we go back again to your witness statement, page 14, paragraph 3.21. You say this, you say, I shared Ivor's internal report with Malcolm Rochford on the 29th of January 2008 and suggested we discuss it at the technical meeting for the following day. And then he says, you say this, it appears from the documents shown to me, I think you mean, in preparation of this witness statement, that as a result of this test, further comparative calorimetry studies were undertaken to understand the difference in fire performance between old technology and new technology K15. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
If we can now go to the monthly activity report prepared by Mr. Meredith for April 2008. This is KIN 303698. What we see in the third bullet point is Mr. Meredith reporting back on those indicative calorimeter tests. And he says this, indicative calorimeter tests on new K15 versus old have shown a quicker time to ignition and double the heat output for the newer product, thus confirming initial suspicions in respect of reaction to fire. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And were those the studies that you were referring to in your witness statement to understand the difference between old tech and new tech?
I can't recall whether that was what I was referring to.
At that stage, April 2008, now that you've got that data back from those indicative calorimeter tests, you know it's got a quicker time to ignition and double the heat output. Can you explain to us why at that stage you don't consider whether or not you need to be withdrawing K15, certainly from the over 18 metre market?
I think obviously those tests were commissioned by Dr. Rochford, so I would at that point waiting to see what the comments were from the technical processing team. But on reflection, in relation to your question, yes.
Yes, you ought to have been considering withdrawing K15 for the over 18 metre market at this point, shouldn't you?
On reflection, yes. Obviously, that he was reporting, his third bullet point here, he's reporting back on his action that he was given from the lamination meeting.
You say in your witness statement, if we can go back to that, at paragraph 3.23 on page 15, picking it up in the fourth line, and you're discussing this very passage in that report from April 08. You say this information would have been included in the wider technical services report, which I shared with Malcolm Rochford as technical director, and these indicative results would have been discussed at the monthly technical meetings as we continue to undertake further small-scale product development testing, including potentially with versions of K15 with an added fire retardant. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do, yes.
So it's obviously been discussed at the monthly technical meetings. Were there ever any discussions at those meetings about withdrawing K15, particularly from the above 18 metre market, given its markedly different performance in fire?
Not that I can recall, no.
And can you help us as to why not? Why do we never see any consideration of that being given at this time?
I don't know.
Did you yourself ever wonder whether it was appropriate to still sell the new technology K15 product, including for use over 18 metres, once you had this information?
I would imagine at that time, in 2008, I would have had some concerns about it, yes.
You imagine you would. Do you not have any recollection of having concerns? This would be quite an important moment, wouldn't it, for you to realise that the product you're selling performs this way in fire?
It would. We'd always question. Like I say, it was 12 years ago. I would be looking for a steer as well from Dr. Rochford as how we would pursue this or how we would move forward. So.
Is the truth that, in fact, all you were focused on at that time was desperately trying to obtain some other evidence that K15 could be considered appropriate so that you could maintain the sales you were already achieving in that market?
I don't believe we were desperate. We certainly wanted to be in that market. I don't believe we were desperate to be in that market, but we were certainly wanted to be in that market.
Well, you were already in that market, weren't you?
We were.
There are lots of examples of K15 being used on tall buildings before this time.
On all, yeah, and below 18 metres as well, yes.
Yeah. But I'm going to ask the question again. In truth, weren't you focused at that time on sales and not focused at all on health and safety?
I certainly wasn't focused on sales. My role was managing the technical department, the advisory service and the large-scale tests. My role wasn't sales orientated.
And to what extent do you think you were appropriately focused on life safety at this time?
I think we were always focused on life safety. Would we do things differently on reflection? I would say yes, we would.
Yeah. Can we go now to the Technical Services Department monthly report for July 2008? This is at KIN 408848, and I want to look at page 2 under the heading Projects. So here we can see it says a sample of the OP90 fire retardant phenolic has been sent to the BRE for indicative calorimetry testing. We hope to find a lower calorific output and slower time to ignition. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And then it says this, a product with these characteristics is required to maintain our position in the high-rise facade market above 18 metres. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So do you agree there was no question but that you were fully present in that market and seeking to maintain Kingspan's position in it?
Yes, I do agree, yes.
And then it says below it, a BS 8414 Part 2 test is being planned for August if the OP90 product shows beneficial characteristics. So that's the fire retardant product, isn't it? A changed product.
I don't know. I can't recollect what was different with the OP90 development product.
And then we can see this. It says a definite increase has been seen in TS inquiries. Does that stand for technical service inquiries?
It does, yes.
Questioning phenolic suitability for use above 18 metres. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So would you agree that you were also aware at this time that people were beginning to question how this phenolic insulation could be used above 18 metres?
Reading that, yes. And I was aware of more inquiries in relation to range screen cladding per se, yes.
Yeah. And yet, it's your evidence, is it, that you simply didn't give any consideration to whether or not K15 should be in that market at all?
Above 18 metres, with reflection at that time, below 18 metres, there was obviously opportunities for phenolic and other combustible insulation materials.
And when you say above 18 metres with reflection at that time, are you saying that you, at the time, you simply didn't give any consideration to whether or not K15 should be in that market?
We would have given reflection. At that time, we would have considered it, but like I say, with reflection and based on all the knowledge we're receiving now, then, you would maybe have had a different opinion, yes.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about the Kingspan off-site testing. We know that 2 tests were carried out with Kingspan off-site at the BRE to 8414 Part 2 on systems which incorporated new tech K15. Those were on the 9th of April and the 6th of June 2008. Do you remember those?
I don't. And when I wrote my statement, I had no recollection of them, but obviously with contemporaneous documents, I have been made aware of it now, yes.
Do you remember Kingspan off-site raising concerns about how the K15 performed in those tests?
Within the system they tested, yes.
Yeah. And do you remember dealing with how to answer those concerns?
Yes.
And those tests in April and June 2008, they were both failures, weren't they? They couldn't be classified to BR135.
Yes, that's my understanding.
If we can go now to KIN 403698. This is a report from Ivor Meredith, 4th of April 2008. And we can see in the first bullet point, he reports this. He says, BS8414 Part 2 off-site test with rendered Versa panel rain screen, 210 millimetres of K15, failed that test. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And I want to ask you about some correspondence in the days after the second off-site test that was on 6th of June 2008. Can we go to KIN 403704 and look at the bottom of the first page? This is an email on the 9th of June 2008 to you, Malcolm Rochford, Vincent Coppock. Sorry, you're copied in here. It's to Malcolm Rochford, Vincent Coppock, and then you're copied with Wyn Davis. And Mr. Meredith says this, Malcolm, Vincent, the question of K15's bad performance is no longer just an internal one. It would seem Offsite had a very dramatic test failure. You see that there?
Yes, I do.
And then he says, therefore, I need to know how soon I can have samples of the OP90 phenolic for business critical R&D research and development. And then if we can go over the page, he says, once I've reviewed the information, I will provide a more comprehensive report later. However, the attached picture shows the most recent K15 test performed by Offsite and K15 burning under its own steam 10 minutes after the test was put out. And then he says this, Offsite are gravely concerned that we are selling something that doesn't do what we say it does. And then he says, to validate the new product from a fire point of view, I would need samples of the following sizes. So he wants various samples, including to do a Part 6 test. Do you see that 2 lines down?
Yes.
Do you remember receiving this email from Mr. Meredith?
I don't remember receiving it, but obviously I was copied on it, so I would have read it.
Do you remember being aware that Offsite, Kingspan Offsite, were gravely concerned that we are selling something that doesn't do what we say it does?
Yeah, I believe that they were annoyed, probably the wrong word, but they certainly they were concerned that it had failed that particular test, yes. But the test, I think the Versi panel is classed as a combustible cladding material in front of it as well. So, you know, if that played a part of it. But yes, I was aware of their concerns.
Well, you say that it had a combustible panel and so that might play a part of it, but just look at the top page of this email. Offsite are reporting that K15 was burning under its own steam 10 minutes after the test was put out. It's entirely consistent with what Mr. Meredith had reported and what the BRE had reported about the 2 previous 8414 tests, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. Did you take these concerns seriously, the concerns of Kingspan Offsite, as communicated to you by Mr. Meredith?
By a copy of this, yes, I would be concerned, and obviously it was sent to Malcolm and Vince, so it'd be interesting to see how they responded to Ivor's concerns.
Are you saying because they're copied in, somehow you didn't need to worry about it because your bosses are copied in there? What about from your own position as technical manager? Were you not concerned yourself that you were selling something that doesn't do what you say it does?
I was obviously concerned that it was failing these 8414 tests. Obviously, I was concerned, yes.
But it wasn't just failing 8414 tests, was it? You couldn't get it to pass the BS476 Part 6 test. That's why you're trying to validate a further new product in this email. Would you agree?
I would agree, yes.
Yes. Now, moving to the top email in this chain, you respond. you say this, you say, on the 9th of June 2008, Ivor, I think it's important we see the fire test report from off-site whilst also looking at the facade assembly, cavity widths and materials adopted within the test rig. Any response to off-site on this matter should be run past myself before it's sent to the outside world. As you know, off-site are extremely reactionary. Do you see that there?
I do see that, yes.
With regard to their comment that we are selling something that doesn't do what we say it does, what statements are they referring to? Do you see? Now, first of all, what did you mean by off-site can be extremely reactionary? As you know, off-site are extremely reactionary. Why did you say that?
They were on a critical path to launching various systems off-site, 2D systems into the marketplace, and obviously any failures would disrupt that critical path, and by default, yeah, they were expressed their concerns that they were being pushed back on their market readiness. Yeah.
But it wouldn't be reactionary to express concerns about fire safety, would it?
It wouldn't, no. But as I think overall, the term they're reactionary because they were on such a critical path. But no, they were right to have concerns.
When you asked Mr. Meredith what statements are they referring to about that comment that we're selling something that doesn't do what we say it does, did you genuinely not know what Mr. Meredith was referring to?
No, I would have known what the comments they were making, but whether they had specific, their comments were related to actually specifics that we were saying. I think that's what I was trying to ask.
You were aware, weren't you, at this time that your marketing material was promoting K15, including for use over 18 metres?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. In the meantime, Mr. Rochford's responded to Mr. Meredith already. If you look at the email below this one, he says this, please expedite this trial. Either if you're confident that old process will pass the test, we may have no choice but to provide old process K15 for offsite until the FR issue is sorted out. Now, just taking that sentence, you're on the next part of the string, so presumably you saw this email. Can you help us as to what you understood him to mean? We may have no choice but to provide old process K15 for offsite until the FR issue is sorted out. What were you suggesting? Sorry, what did you think Mr. Rochford was suggesting there?
He was obviously suggesting that if we could go back to the old process K15, we might have an increased chance of passing the particular offsite fire test.
And did you take him as suggesting that you could provide some old process K15 for the purpose of some further off-site testing?
Sorry, can you just repeat that again? Sorry.
Yeah, did you take him as suggesting that you could provide some old process K15 for the purpose of some further off-site testing?
Yes, whether that was material we had available or we could switch the technology, because at that time we did have the capability to switch the technology because some products were still being made, I believe, under the old technology. So whether it was material we had available or whether he could produce further product just for Kingspan offsite.
Yes.
Going forward, I presume,
Yes.
not just for the test, but going forward as a bespoke product.
I see. What, go back to producing old tech K15 for what use?
Reading that now, I would assume he's thinking of producing old technology K15, both to test and supply to offsite going forward.
I see. And then he says this.
Can I just explain? You were providing K15 to offsite for their manufacturing purposes. Is that what was going on?
Yes, they were, for all intents and purposes, an OEM, and they were outside engineered manufacturer. So basically, we were just a component within their system.
Right.
So we manufactured K15, and they would then assemble it in their 2D or 3D wall or building assembly.
Thank you. Yes.
In the next sentence there at the end of that email, he says, Gwyn, I know this is a nightmare for processing, but we can't carry on providing something that we know fails a fire test. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Specifically, to whom did you think he meant the product could not continue to be provided?
I think we is Kingspan.
Yes, but providing to who? To Kingspan off-site or to someone else?
It could be read. It could be read in a number of ways. That it could be to off-site or in general.
Can you help us as to how you understood it at the time?
Yeah, I can't recall how I would understood it at the time. I would assume at the time maybe I would have inferred. I would have thought off-site is what he was referring to.
Right. If we can go now to KIN 30020913, and I want to look at page 4. This is another email chain from that same chain in June 2008. And on page 4, there's an email from Ivan Meredith, 9th of June 08 at 1801. Do you see that there? And it's to Gwyn Davis, Malcolm Rochford, Vincent Coppock, and you are copied. And he says this: "You're correct, the old process I recently tested unfortunately also failed. However, the new process would not have had a chance. Whereas old process will self-extinguish, new process has proven itself in a vertical situation to continue to burn when the flame source is removed. We do have a paper trail that shows considerably better performance with old tech. However, this cannot be applied to steel frame facade situations, which is 80% of the market." And then he says, "I don't currently suggest we revert to old tech yet, just to give top priority to getting the OP90 trialled." Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Were you yourself aware of the paper trail showing considerably better performance for old technology K15 than the new technology K15 at this time?
I would have done at the time.
Yeah. It's the paper trail we've just been looking at this morning, isn't it?
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah. Do you agree that this shows that in June 2008, Kingspan did not have a K15 product, which it considered capable of passing a large-scale fire test when tested as part of a cladding system?
We were certainly struggling on some aspects of K15 on the 8414 test we'd undertaken, yes. I
Yeah.
agree.
Going back to this thread, the email culminates, if we look at pages 3 to 4, there's a plan then is made to conduct testing on the research and development fire retardant K15 with a different resin. That's, if you look at the 10th of June 08 at 11:08.
12th of June. Is it?
10th of June 08, sorry. If we go bottom of page 3. Do you see there, 10th of June 08, 11:08? And if we go over the page to page 4, Vince Coppock says, as the passing BS476 Part 6 low heat release data achieved with this OP920 present in this foam has only been with black Lamtech fall at 20mm thickness. Any further insight into heat release by calorimetric technique compared to standard new tech foam without that would be of benefit. How big a sample do you need? He's got this OP920 modified phenolic foam that's undergoing lambda aging. So Vincent is suggesting a different form of K15 that could be tested in the future. Do you agree?
Without the OP920, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, what I'm suggesting is that the thrust of this email is he's discussing what products you could test in the future, including with this OP920, which is
Yes,
fire retardant.
Yes, with and without the OP920.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the R330UF, can you help us as to what that is?
I have no idea, I'm afraid. No.
And if you go to the top of page 1 on the 13th of June at 2:19, after there's been some discussion about what you've got in stock and what you can kind of develop for testing, you say, thanks, Vince, this does seem the best route in the short term. So do you agree that you approved this approach of doing some more research and development and trying to find another formulation of K15 that might pass a large-scale fire test?
I did agree with the route forward with regards to the formulations. I couldn't pass a comment, but the concept he put forward did seem at the time the best route forward in the short term.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Meredith, we've seen, has raised concerns repeatedly about the fire performance of the new technology K15. We've seen that in a number of these documents. Would you agree that, in fact, what the emails show is that you dismissed his concerns about the fire performance of the current product and just pressed on with trying to find a different product that might pass in the future?
I did have concerns. It'd be wrong to say I didn't have concerns, what Ivor was telling me. I think it was the decision to move forward and continue with development of products was made as a collective, not by an individual.
Let's look at some more emails linked to this the Kingspan off-site episode. Do you remember that in 2008, you, Malcolm Rochford, and Mr. Meredith continued to be involved in dealing with queries from Kingspan off-site about the test that they'd done to 8414 Part 2? Do you remember that?
Oh, sorry, I was waiting for that. I do recall it only through contemporaneous documents.
Yeah, let's go to KIN 3020917. And I want to look at the bottom of page 2, an email from Mark Stevens of Kingspan Offsite. And in this email, he asks a series of questions about the fire performance of K15. His email is dated July 2008, and he says, I'm concerned with the lack of response with regard to the performance of the K15 product on the 8414 test that we have completed. I have a further 4 tests booked, as you are aware, and at this time I'm unsure of the way forward in terms of detailing the samples to pass the test. We have the samples built here at Sherborne, insulated with material from the same batch as the previous failed tests. And he asks these questions: is the material appropriate to use on the future tests? Is the reason for the failure specific to a batch of K15, to the current formulation of K15, or to the details that we used? Is it normal for K15 to continue to burn for in excess of 30 minutes from the removal of the ignition source? Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So he's raising, would you agree, some pretty pertinent questions relevant to the testing that they've been doing on K15 under 8414 tests?
Yes.
And he's saying in the first lines that he's concerned with the lack of response. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
Can you remember why he was saying that to you and Ivor Meredith in this email? Had there been a lack of response?
I can't recall.
Did you have any evidence at that time to suggest that the failure was specific to a particular batch of K15?
I can't recall at the time. I think Malcolm may have been involved in these discussions as well at some point, but I can't recall at the minute whether I had any concerns about a particular batch.
There were problems, though, with the current formulation of K15 as he's inquiring, were there not? We've just been looking at document after document which sets out those problems. Would you agree?
It does, but it's not related to those were not related, as far as I'm aware, to a faulty production batch.
No, I agree. What I'm suggesting to you is that you were aware by this time, July 2008, that there were problems more generally with new technology K15.
Yes, I agree.
Yes. And you were also aware of previous large-scale tests in 2007 and 2008, where the K15 had done the same thing. It had continued to burn after the removal of the ignition source. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree.
And you respond to Mark Stevens. This is the next email up on the same page on the 2nd of July at 16:52. You say this, Mark, as you are aware, there are always inconsistencies in relation to fire tests, both large and small scale. You have seen the results achieved by Kingspan insulation with regards K15, both with a generic cladding and without the cladding, and the result was similar, with the temperature of the thermocouples being within the guidelines of the standard. Now, pausing there, it's right, isn't it, that those tests you're referring to with a generic cladding and without cladding, you must be referring to the 2005 tests, yes? The 2005 test to 8414.
Yes, I would have been.
Yeah. And then you say the burn pattern of the K15 was also identical in each instance with no continuation of the burning seen in your test. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
As with all companies within the group, we are always striving to improve the performance of our products. With this in mind, we're currently awaiting confirmation of the availability of formulation additive that we believe may improve the fire performance of K15. Our resin suppliers are working to understand the viscosity increase that may be seen with this addition to the formulation, which may or may not affect our processing. And then you say that's standard practice in resin manufacturer. And then you go on, in short, we are awaiting confirmation of timescales, but would envisage a month, 2 months before we see raw material to trial on the line. We would then undertake small-scale tests to confirm our expectations. With regards to the reason for failure, this is difficult for us to determine, especially having already had some success with BS 8414. I would suggest only the BRE technicians can confirm if it was due to the details that were adopted. In consideration of the above, together with the official report observations, you may decide to wait until this modified product is available or continue with your planned testing programme. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Why didn't you tell him that the tests you're referring to there from 2005 were on a different product?
I don't know why I wouldn't have advised him that.
Why didn't you tell him that when tests had been carried out in 2007 and 2008 on the new tech K15, it performed very differently to how it had performed in 2005?
I think with those two tests, there's a lot of confidentiality involved, so it is difficult to actually discuss those with a third party.
But this is about fire safety.
It is.
About life safety. Why would
absolutely.
confidentiality prevent you from sharing with a Kingspan offsite, a partner company?
I agree, on the outside it might look that way, but there are confidentiality agreements in place, and I think it was always the assumption we'd have a better product. This letter was clearly written not just with my input. There would be input here from the processing side as well. So I think in respect, it is difficult to highlight failed tests in that regard to another third person.
You talk about confidentiality. Why couldn't you, forget sending him the test reports from 2007, 2008, why couldn't you just describe that Ivor Meredith, the BRE, had seen K15 performing very differently and make that clear? That wouldn't have breached any form of confidentiality to anyone else, would it?
It wouldn't, but you've got, we were testing a different system here with offsite as well, so it wasn't the aluminium cassette that had failed in the past, so whether that was playing a part in our thinking as well.
Why didn't you tell Mr. Stevens about the quicker time to ignition and the double the heat output that you knew the new version of K15 was showing in the small scale tests?
I don't know why I wouldn't have told him that.
If we can go to KIN 409031, where this continues. Can we go to the top of the page? We can see what you've done is forward the email that you've sent below to Gwyn Davis. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
On the 2nd of July 2008, and you say this, I'm spinning so much I'm dizzy. Do you see that?
I do, yes.
What did you mean by that comment?
I think basically there's two issues. One, extremely busy, but also the contents of the email that was written by the team was trying to provide us with more time to get a product that we could feel we could pass with offsite.
Mr. Heath, you're spinning because you're not telling the whole truth. That's right, isn't it?
No, I think it's basically inferring that we're trying to give ourselves time, or the production people time, to actually develop a product that would pass the test. I don't think it was spinning in relation to leave things out. I think it was basically we're trying to create a delay with offsite so we had a more robust product that they could test within their system.
But he's asked you direct questions, very pertinent questions, given the information you had about the performance of K15. And as we've just discussed, you haven't told him any of that pertinent information.
I haven't, no, and that was probably, I would say, under advice as well from the processing team.
I'd suggest to you that the reason you've said I'm spinning so much I'm dizzy is because you're effectively showing off to Gwyn Davis that you've spun a tale to Mark Stevens, which you know not to be the entire truth.
No,
Do you agree?
I don't agree, no. I think it was purely in relation to that we were trying to delay their tests and wait for this next development product to come through. I don't think it was a malicious in any way to say I was withholding information back, no.
I didn't say it was malicious. I was saying that you weren't telling the full truth to Mark Stevens, and you knew that when you sent that email.
Looking at it now, there's certainly gaps that you would provide more information, but at the time from the team, like I say, it was felt we just wanted more time to develop another product for testing in their particular assembly.
Can we look at another email linked to this? KIN 3020916. This is Mr. Meredith responding to you on the 2nd of July 2008. And he says he's obviously seen your email below to Mark Stevens, and he says, nice one, political genius. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And would you agree that that's entirely consistent with the fact that you haven't told the entire truth to Mark Stevens in your email below?
Well, as I said before, there is gaps in there now that, with hindsight we would have filled, but at the time we were just trying to delay until we had a product available. So it was a political letter.
On the next day, Mr. Meredith emails you, if we can go KIN 3020917. Looking at the email at the bottom of that page, he emails and he says, help, I'm getting seriously grilled now based on this email. I'm currently on the phone. We need to ensure continuity of our answers, otherwise we will destroy our relationship and never be taken seriously again. Also, I may get accused of being a liar if we change our story. Are we saying that the product supplied, which failed their test, is the same product that we got to pass the test? And would you agree? That's a key question, isn't it? Whether or not you are saying that or you aren't, as had been asked of you by Mark Stevens.
Yes, you could assume that, yes.
And then he says, I've been working closely with the BRE technicians and they are currently helping us understand why old tech worked and new tech doesn't, and whether OD90 will have a chance. And then he goes on. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
And then you respond up the page, who are you getting grilled by? And then Mr. Meredith says, Aidan and Mark, up the page. And then you say, is this since my email? And he says, yes. And then you say, finally, forward emails and or ask them to put concerns in writing. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
What was your answer to Mr. Meredith's question where he says, are we saying that the product supplied, which failed their test, is the same product that we got to pass the test? What was your answer to Ivor's question?
I can't recall if I answered him or not.
Well, the answer is no, isn't it? The real answer, no, the product which passed in 2005 is not the same as the one you supplied to them, was it?
On reflection, correct.
Did you ever tell Kingspan offsite that at any stage? They've raised concerns with you, they've asked questions. Did anyone ever get transparent with Kingspan offsite and tell them exactly what the true picture was?
I can't recall. I mean, we had various conversations, face-to-face meetings as well up at Sherburn. I can't recall the specifics.
Aidan Wilkinson of Kingspan Offsite does put his concerns in writing. This is at KIN 403714. If we can go to that, it's page 2. In the bottom email. Mr. Meredith to Kingspan Offsite. Sorry, if we go just below this, I think we see. No, if we go, sorry, go up. We've got Mr. Meredith saying, yes, sorry, Ivor Meredith is there saying to Mark Stevens and Aidan Wilkinson on the 14th of July, gents, I've received the DVD footage from the disaster fire test today. It would help me a lot if you put your specific concerns in writing so I can pass on the message. Sorry, that's what we see there.
Yes.
And then moving up the bottom to the bottom of page 1, Aidan Wilkinson's questions are in the same vein as those we've already seen by Mark Stevens.
Yes.
Following the recent fire test, we have the following concerns. After the heat source was extinguished, continued to burn considerable time, in excess of 30 minutes. And then he goes on, is that what's expected of this material? Is it normal for K15 to burn in excess of 30 minutes? Is it specific to a batch? So pretty much identical questions to those that they were asking previously.
Mm-hmm.
And then going up the chain, you state, following that, you say to Ivor Meredith, Malcolm Rochford, Vincent Coppock, you say, good evening, we need to be careful how we answer the concerns of offsite. Any suggestions? And you needed to be careful, didn't you? Because there was a lawful lot that was relevant that you weren't telling them. Do you agree?
I think that was one of the reasons why I asked Ivor to ask them to put it in writing so that Ivor and I could actually elevate their queries as well, so everybody could understand what the concerns of offsite for. So that was one of the reasons I did ask Ivor to ask Kingspan Offsite to put their comments in writing.
If we now go where we can see this chain carries on, KIN 408844, we go to page 2. About halfway down, we see the same email from you saying we need to be careful, sent on the 16th of July. And then above that, we can see Ivor Meredith's response sent the next day, 17th of July, at 11:29. It starts at the bottom of page 1, if we can just see that. 17th of July 2008 there, and then if we go over, and he says, Aidan is pushing me for a meeting so we can work together on getting a pass for offsite. This collective work could be of great benefit, but first we need to agree what can be disclosed. Do you see that there?
I do. Who's this addressed to, this email? Sorry.
Yes, sorry. It's spanning 2 pages. If we go right at the bottom of page 1, it's to you, Malcolm Rochford, and Vincent Coppock.
Right.
See that there?
Yes. Was it CCs as well? Sorry.
Yeah, Gwyn
Gwyn,
Davis
okay.
is CC'd.
Right.
And he's saying, Aidan's pushing for a meeting. First, we need to agree what can be disclosed. And do you agree he's saying that because thus far, Kingspan Offsite haven't been told about the problems with the power performance of new tech K15, yes?
Yes, there was gaps in my response, yes.
Yeah. And then he says, in the next paragraph, I've inserted some answers below, however, believe we should tread very carefully here. By Offsite going all out for LPCB approval with their first test, i.e. fully witnessed, has not been wise, and this move could be responsible for a lot of the questions we are now getting from industry. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And then he says, I think we should at least discount the product previously supplied as an especially bad batch. However, and then he goes on, having reviewed the video, the problems seem to recur at about 22 minutes. And then he goes on to make some observations about the test. Do you see that there? Who would have decided what could be disclosed to Kingspan offsite?
That would be Malcolm.
And what were the questions which you understood at the time Kingspan were receiving from industry? Ivor Meredith's referring there to questions we're now getting from industry. What did you understand those questions to be?
I think it was in relation to its suitability. The questions we did get were fairly bespoke as to suitability in certain applications above 18 metres.
Yeah. Did you share Mr. Meredith's view that it was not wise for off-site tests to have been fully witnessed?
Fully witnessed by the LPCB? Or
Yeah.
I don't.
Who are the LPCB? Just help.
It's the Loss Prevention Certification Board,
Yeah.
I believe. I think. Yes, I think that's the acronym.
If we go up, if we go back to the chain, sorry, we're dotting out because these chains are all in different emails, but if we go now to KIN 403714 on page 1, 17th of July 2008 at 9:19, you've asked for any suggestions. And this is Malcolm Rochford. He says, I think the best response at the moment is to say we are investigating possible reasons for the failure and we'll come back to them as soon as we are clearer on what caused it. Meanwhile, we recommend they do not test the other material they have used to fabricate the installations, as that was the same batch and may suffer from a similar problem. If necessary, I suppose we could send old formulation material for the testing if you think this is a better chance, and they are pressing, but this is undesirable for several reasons, and I'd rather delay and get the new FR product made as soon as Hexagon can supply the material. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Were you content with that way of responding to Kingspan offsite?
At that time, I would have been.
Did anyone, as far as you were aware, ever tell Kingspan offsite anything more about the K15 that they'd been testing and the differences you'd observed?
I can't recall whether we did or we didn't.
I now want to look at some marketing material for K15 during the period that you were the technical manager. If we just pick up the very first product literature for K15, just to flash it up on the screen, it's KIN 30200720, is from March 2001. And there are various editions of this marketing material. And it's not until the 7th edition in March 2007 that any reference is made to the 8414 testing carried out in May. If we bring that up, it's at KIN 402580. And if we go to page, so that's the May 07 marketing literature. We can see that from the top right-hand side. Do you see that there?
Yes, yes, I do.
And if we go to page 2, we can see 3 pictures on the left-hand side. The first depicts an unspecified cladding panel on a masonry wall. Do you see that there, figure 1?
Yes.
And then below that is a masonry-backed system with a terracotta clay tile external finish. And then the third is a steel frame system. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And K15 had never been tested as at May 2007 as part of an external facade system clad in terracotta clay tile panels, had it?
No, I believe this literature does cover all applications, i.e. above and below, above and below the 18 metres.
I see. And it's right that K15 had never been tested in May 07 as part of a a system fixed to a steel frame, had it?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
If we go to page 6 and look in the bottom left-hand corner under the heading Fire Performance, do you see there in that bottom, if we can blow up that bottom of the page and look at the left-hand column, we can see an assertion is made about class 0 and being low risk in the technical standards in Scotland. And then below that, a number of tests are referred to, including, we see the BS 8414 test. Do you see that at the bottom of that table?
That's correct, yes.
And we can see it says 8414 2002. It doesn't say whether it's part 1 or part 2.
No, but by 2002, it infers it is part 1, because I think the part 2 came out later than 2002.
This is 2007, this product literature, March 2007.
Yes, but I'm sorry, I'm just referring to where it says BS 8414 2002. It can only be part 1.
I see, okay. And then it says successfully tested. Kingspan Cooltherm K15 does not contribute to fire propagation spread within a cladding system. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And by this time, we've got the new product K15 being sold, haven't we? The new tech K15.
Yes, we have.
And that description wouldn't be appropriate for that, would it?
Not entirely, no. No, it is. With hindsight, you would use a different narrative now. I agree.
And then if we look in the paragraph below the table, it says Kingspan Cooltherm K15 meets the criteria within BR 135 and is therefore acceptable for use above 18 metres in accordance with. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
So it's suggesting here that the product K15 meets the criteria within BR 135 and is acceptable for use. You would accept that that's not entirely accurate, is it? It's not a product that meets those standards, it's a system, isn't it?
It is a system that does meet those standards, yes, I agree.
And then if we go to the 8th issue of the product literature, KIN 409703, dated November 2008, and if we look on the second page, we've got the same 3 diagrams there of the systems, including the steel frame system at the bottom of that page. By November 2008, K15 had been tested as part of an external facade system affixed to a steel frame system 4 times by that stage, hadn't it? Twice with the METSEC SOTEC tests and twice by Kingspan offsite. Do you agree?
I agree, yes.
And then if we go down again, and all of those were failures, we've already established that. And if we go down again to page 6, we can see the exact same section, fire performance. And would you agree that neither of these issues of the product literature, either in 2007 or 2008, mention what system was actually tested to BS 8414? Do you agree?
I do agree, and also, with hindsight, perhaps the literature should have been in 2 parts, up to 18 metres and above 18 metres.
Yes. The test, it doesn't mention that the test was to 8414 part 1 only, does it?
Only that it references the 2002 standard.
It doesn't say that the results can only apply to systems affixed to masonry substrates, does it?
It doesn't, no. No, it's not included in the narrative, but that standard is referenced without putting part 1 in for whatever reason.
It doesn't state, does it, that the results wouldn't be relevant to any other system other than that tested, does it?
It doesn't, no.
No. Or, more fundamentally, it doesn't mention that the K15 now being sold is an entirely different product to the one that went through that 8414 test you're referencing here in 2008.
It is a different product, not entirely different, but it is a different product. I agree.
But we can agree it performed very differently in fire, didn't it?
From what we're seeing, yes.
Yeah. Would you agree that this product literature is misleading?
On reflection, yes.
And there should be a number of qualifications in this literature, should there not, even if the 2005 test is going to be relied on?
No, as I said, there should have been some more caveats and, perhaps more differential between what you can and can't do above and below 18 metres.
How can you explain to us how this product literature came to be issued? Can you explain to us how it came to be issued?
No, again, it was, it would have been done on a collective. There is a procedure to go through the literature and a sign-off procedure. So,
and you accept in your witness statement that everyone needed to be happy with the text of the marketing documents, and you worked together collaboratively to achieve the technical accuracy of it, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. As much as we could, absolutely, with people who were available at the time, yes.
That was paragraph 4.15 on page 22 of your statement for the transcript. And the technical accuracy of marketing documents is particularly critical where it relates to fire performance and matters of life safety. Would you agree?
It does have its part to play, yes. But also the advice of the technical services as well. So the literature we have is fairly standard format. And hopefully the idea was that it would lead enquirers to the technical services department for further details. So,
but you didn't achieve technical accuracy, did you, in the way you were describing?
On reflection, no.
No. And are you prepared to accept that that was deliberate, that Kingspan fully intended the reader of these documents to think that they were suitable for use over 18 metres without qualification?
No, I don't believe it was deliberate. I think like I say, the literature was a standard format to encourage the reader to ring for further advice, to contact us. I don't believe it was deliberate at all.
Can we look at an email, KIN 405377? This is an email between you, Mr. Meredith, and others in February 2009. About the language to be used in NBS specification documents. If we can blow up that top email. So it's from Ivor Meredith to you and to others. And he says, I've checked the class naught text throughout the course range. Please adopt the same text as used in the K8 literature, May 07. And then he says, for K15, I would mention the BS 8414 test, but not use the terminology out of the current literature, as this is a bit dodgy. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Perhaps state case 15 has been successfully tested to 8414 to assess suitability for its use. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Did you agree with Mr. Meredith when you received this that the current literature was a bit dodgy?
I can't remember what I would have said to Ivor at the time, but as I mentioned previously, I think, on reflection, it could have been written better.
Now, it's right, isn't it, that many of those who were considering specifying K15 did, in fact, contact Kingspan for further information and advice. That's right, isn't it?
We did get inquiries for K15, obviously, yes.
And we're going to look now at some of that correspondence. In general, is it fair to say that such correspondence was not normally answered by you, but that you would provide guidance to your team wherever that was needed?
I think that's a fair comment, yes.
Yeah. And is it right that as technical manager, you would have the final word on how queries were to be responded to, particularly where it's talking about its suitability for use over 18 metres? Would you agree?
Yes, I would. I might have sought further advice from other people if necessary, but yes, I agree with your statement.
I want to pick this up in 2006. You were asked by the inquiry if you had at any stage been made aware of any concerns about the K15 product. And you mentioned in your witness statement Wintech, who were facade consultants. They raised concerns about K15, didn't they?
We did have correspondence with Wintec, I think, on a particular project, whilst I was technical manager, yes.
Yeah. And Wintec expressed concerns that K15 was not of limited combustibility, didn't they?
They did ask, I can't recall if they had concerns, but they certainly did ask the questions from memory, yes.
Let's look first at some 2006 correspondence, again about the Buxton Street project, constructed by Barris, which involved Wintec. This is at KIN 405243. So Kingspan had sent the 2005 8414 test report to Barris to support the use of K15 on the project. And then on page 2, James Emery on the 30th of November 06 at 12:05.
Sorry, could you just go back to the previous letter to Barris? Or the letter from Barris?
Yes, that's what I'm taking you to now.
Oh, right, sorry.
So we've looked at this already this morning because Barris were raising concerns, Wintec were raising concerns about the test 220876 mentioned there, which is the 2005 test, not being a valid test for the system at Barris because they needed it to part 2. Do you remember looking at that with me this morning?
Yes.
And they're saying in the third paragraph, the build-up of components is not comparable. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And therefore, in the final paragraph, they say, therefore, the test report is not relevant and building regulation compliance is still outstanding. And what he's written there is entirely correct, isn't it? That in order to use it on a project with a steel frame system, it needed to have been tested to part 2 of 8414. It was an entirely legitimate concern to be raising, wasn't it?
It was.
And then if we go one email down at the top of page 1, it was sent by Steve Robinson of Barris to Ivor Meredith requiring an urgent response. Do you see that there? So they want an urgent response. And then at the top of page 1, he sends it on to you asking for guidance on this mess. He's talking about this mess in the first line. Do you see that there?
I do, yes.
Can you remember what was the response to Barris and Wintec in 2006? What advice did you give to Mr. Meredith when he asked you for any guidance on this one?
I can't recall. I can't recall off the top of my head.
If we go then to 2008, I want to look at some more examples and look at a chain of emails from May 08, KIN 403701. This is an email between Kingspan and LSC Limited, which discusses 2 different projects, ICE developments and in Stevenage and Wakering Road. And we look, if we can start at page 2, in the middle of the page, from Malcolm Wallace of Higgins Homes to Emily Vaughan on the 16th of May. They ask for the test results to 8414. And they say, we're currently unable to sell units on the site until this matter is resolved. Will you please forward this information to me as a matter of urgency? And then going up to the top of page 2 and the bottom of page 1, Emily Vaughan forwards the email to Ivor Meredith on the 19th of May asking for assistance about how to respond. And then if we go to the bottom of page 1, Ivor Meredith forwards the email to you, and he says this: I'm having big issues with K15 approval at the moment. The problems are relating to NHBC jobs. This causes a lot of concern. And then there are some back and forth emails planning a discussion about this. And at the very top of page 1, there's another email from Ivor Meredith to you saying, this was the email I'm worried about. We simply do not have the information to support the use of K15 above 18 metres with steel frames. And this is the one where it says, I'm worried the product will be removed from site and the ongoing effect of such an action. Do you see that there?
Yes.
He says, I think getting this sorted should take priority over all other projects as it's causing us to lose work. Can you remember what advice you gave to Mr. Meredith at this point?
No, I can't recall, I'm afraid.
You can't recall?
No.
Would you agree that this email shows that members of your team were concerned and worried about the justification they were being instructed to give as to how K15 could be used above 18 metres.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Not only Ivor Meredith, but Emily Vaughan also, she too expresses concern about how to properly reply. Do you agree?
I do agree, yeah, because Ivor would have been the contact, so Emily would have passed this on.
Did you take those concerns seriously?
I would have done at the time, yes.
Can we now go to KIN 405363? This is quite a long series of emails from October 2008. If we start on page 8, there's an email sent by you at 14:25 on the 15th of October 2008 to Matt Craig and then also Neil Brooke. I think they're of Bomer and Kirkland. And you've attached a copy of a BBA certificate. You can see that in the second line.
Yes.
And this email chain to help you relates to the City Park project, which is a building over 18 metres to be clad in open jointed ceramic stone. Can you remember that?
I can't recall the cladding material, no.
About halfway down that email, you say, Cooltherm K15, although not classed as non-combustible, it is classified as class 0 or low risk as defined by the documents. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
So you're saying that even though you knew it was struggling to pass BS 476 Part 6, didn't you, by this time?
Yes, that was based on the position had in relation to the Kestrel technology, yes.
Yes. And then you talk about the BBA certificate, which I'm going to be asking you about this afternoon. Can you help as to why the 2005 test and the BBA certificate meant that K15 was suitable for use on the City Park project, given it was an open jointed ceramic stone system?
It was probably just reference to ceramic stone being ceramic stone being non-combustible, and considering the 2005 test was also a non-combustible cladding.
So you were extrapolating from that 2005 test?
We were, yes.
Even though you're selling new technology K15 by this time?
That's correct.
Yeah. Moving up the chain, if we look at page 6 at the bottom of the page and over to page 7, Neil Brooke from Bomer and Kirkland responds on the 16th of October 2008, and he says, Philip, further to my conversations with Ivor and your email below, I would note that to date you've not substantiated as to on what basis the Cooltherm K15 is suitable for buildings over 18 metres, and appear to be relying wholly on the BRE test result on a mock-up consisting of cement particle board to a height less than this, as per the Agramon certificate you've provided. Now, he's absolutely right, isn't he, in what he says there?
He is, yes. Not sure about the mock-up, but the context of his paragraph is correct, yes.
Yeah. And then if we can go to page 1 now, please. You send Neil Brooke's response on to Keith Lynch, Steve Mace and Ian Clay on the next day, 17th of October, at 11:46. Can you see that? 17th
No.
of October. Actually, it's not 11:46.
Oh, sorry, yes, I can, yes. 10. No.
Is it back a bit? Oh, sorry. There's another document I need to go to now. KIN 409066. Sorry, it's another chain, but in the same string.
Right.
If we go to page 1. Yes, in the middle of that page, sorry, on the 17th of October 2008 at 11:46, you send Neil Brooke's response on to, can you see, Keith Lynch,
I can.
Steve Mace, Ian Clay.
Yes,
You
I
see
can.
those people?
Yes.
Can you help us? Who are they?
Right. Firstly, I can only apologise for the contents of this email at the time made in 2008. Keith was a dear friend of mine who was terminally ill at the time. and I was just forwarding him an email just to give him a snapshot of some of the work I was working on. There's comments made in that email that were basically said because I was in a dark place with Keith being terminally ill and addressing the issues of Beaumont Kirtland weren't top of my priority at that time. Ian Clay and Steve Mace were also close friends of Keith, and we used to try and keep him in touch with what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I can only apologise on the contents of that email.
I see. So what you say is, I think Beaumont and Kirkland, multinational blue chip main contractor, are getting me confused with someone who gives a damn. I'm trying to think of a way out of this one. Imagine a fire running up this tower and then a series of exclamation marks. Any ideas, Phil? And then you say, P.S. I don't do technical on a Friday.
Yes.
You see that there?
Yes. And as I say, I was in a dark place. Say Keith was terminally ill, and just trying to give him a snapshot of what was happening. Had no reflection on how I felt. I was just trying to lighten his load and lighten my load a little bit at the time.
But was it right that you didn't give a damn about Beaumont and Kirkland's concerns?
No, it's not correct. What I meant there is, there was other priorities. Keith's pending death. That put everything in perspective. That Keith was more important at that time than me answering a technical question.
I see. And when you say, I'm trying to think of a way out of this one, imagine a fire running up this tower, what did you mean by that?
I just meant, it was just making light of it is wrong. It's just that, just explaining to Keith, who wasn't in construction, just some of the implications and things that technical we're dealing with, just so, like I say, he could see what was going on in the wider world.
You had tried to mislead that contractor, hadn't you, about the test evidence you had and whether it was suitable to support the use of K15 on that building. Do you agree?
In relation to which, when I misled him, what was?
Well, by relying on the 2005 test data.
We were sending him that data so we could actually, he could use that or make an assessment or pass it to other people who could make assessment based on what we tested in 2005. I don't think we were trying to mislead, just providing with information that him and his team could make a decision about.
Well, they're coming back to you and saying you've not substantiated why K15 is suitable for use on 18 metres, and you appear to be relying on the BRA test result, which you knew from a number of reasons was not supportive of the K15 you were selling at the time.
Sorry, could you put that email up again? Because obviously
it's at the bottom of that page.
Oh, right. Okay.
Neil Brooke is saying to you, you've not substantiated as to what basis the K15 is suitable, and you appear to be relying wholly on the BRE test report.
That's correct, we were, yes.
If you go to the top of this chain, you describe this situation as a nightmare. Do you see that there?
I do, and that again, that was, Keith had responded, and this was just, correspondence between myself and a dear friend who was terminally ill. So it was,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just finish this chain if I could.
Yes, that's all right, go on.
So if we go back now to KIN 405363 and look at the bottom of page 2, we can see that Neil Brooke of Beaumont and Kirkland has asked Wintec for their view now on this issue.
Yes.
So Wintec become involved, and then Greg Sinclair of Wintec responds on the same day, and this is the email on pages 2 and 3, sent on the 16th of October at 17:10. Do you see that there? This is Greg Sinclair, and if we go over the page to page 3, and if you look at the bottom of that page, he says this: Kingspan keep repeating that the product has been tested to BS 8414 and therefore is suitable for use in buildings over 18 metres. What they fail to say is that it is suitable for use only in the configuration as tested, i.e. with cavity barriers and a cement board outer face. Do you see that there? So again, that was an entirely legitimate point for Greg Sinclair of Wintec to be raising, wasn't it?
Yes, we had tested it with just the cement board outer face, that's correct, yes.
And then if we look 2 paragraphs on from that, if we go down the page, he says there in the middle there, the rain screen system being installed at City Park and to the hotel development next door, ! Is an open jointed system. Therefore, external fire breakthrough into the concealed cavity will be easier than the test sample and is being installed without fire barriers. As such, the installation has no resemblance to the tested sample and therefore the test data is not relevant. Now, again, those were entirely legitimate points for Wintec to be making at that time, were they not?
There's some points in there that, without cavity barriers, yes, I agree.
Yeah. And he goes on, it's my understanding the test data is only applicable to the system as tested, and BRE are not prepared to offer any opinion on the system designs. And then if we go to the next email up, Neil Brooke of Bomer and Kirkland writes to Kingspan again on the 17th of October 2008 at 8:07. He says, further to my email of yesterday and the reply received from Andrew Pack, I've attached below a response from Greg Sinclair at Wintec. Do you see that there? And then if we could go down in his email.
Sorry, could you just go back? Sorry.
And so what he's saying is I've got below a detailed response from Greg Sinclair at Wintec, and that's forwarded to you, Ivor Meredith and Andrew Pack. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And he says if we He says in that top paragraph, I requested in my email yesterday you give specific guidance with regard to the use of cavity barriers. The Agrimont certificate that I was forwarded made clear the guidance should be sought from the certificate holder, and that's why he's coming to you. And then he says it's clear that the BRE test does not relate to the situation we have. Rain screen's significantly different. Please clarify on what basis the material is suitable for use. And then at the penultimate paragraph, your responses to date have failed to provide any assurances on this matter and have continued to rely on test data from a different system. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
And then if we go up the chain, we can see an internal email from you on the 17th of October 2008 saying, in the event you haven't answered this email, either AP and I are currently preparing a detailed response that will adopt a standard issue. We'll come back to that letter. And then Ivor says, I'm having a few issues on my test at the moment, would appreciate the help. Wintec are digging their heels in with a couple of projects, and without putting ourselves in a legal position, it's getting tricky. And then you say this, Wintec can go fuck themselves, and if they're not careful, we'll sue the arse off them. Do you see that there?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain why you wrote that, given that Wintec were giving entirely accurate advice to their customers? Why did that warrant that response from you?
No, it was totally unprofessional at that time, and with on reflection, I wouldn't have sent that. I think it was just frustration that we were going round in circles with them. So it was totally unprofessional, and it was based on the fact that we were going round in circles with them.
Would you agree that this reflected a culture within Kingspan as a company at the time in terms of its response to these kind of requests?
No, I don't believe so. Like in any organisations, you have your good times and your difficult times. And I think, like I say, we were just going around in circles with Wintec, and I think there's just a bit of frustration came out there on a Friday. So it was totally unprofessional of me.
Why didn't you take Wintec's concerns seriously, given the potential impact on life safety? Why brush them off in this way to your colleagues?
I think we did take life safety seriously. We provided Wintec with the data we had for them to make the appropriate analysis to say whether, based on this, yes, it was acceptable, or no, it wasn't, and we move on.
Was threatening legal action a common way for Kingspan to respond to those who questioned the suitability of K15 for use above 18 metres?
No, not in my time, not at all. Like I say, it was totally unprofessional.
Mr Chairman, thank you for letting me finish that chain.
Is that a good point?
It's a good moment, thank you.
Right, well, I think it's time we stop for some lunch. So we'll break there. We'll come back and continue at 2:05, please.
Okay.
And no discussing your evidence, please,
No.
when you're out of the room.
No.
All right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. 2:05, please.